As I said, this was written as a after dinner speech for the officers' mess of one of the regiments that took part. The regiment that took part was the 102nd Sub Beach Group, and they landed on Juno Beach. Now, they're a fascinating regiment, actually, one that perhaps doesn't instantly spring to mind. But while we're paying tribute to the veterans who freed Europe, then let's think of the 102nd. Now, their job is to land on the beach, not to fight the Germans per se, but their movement control and their engineers. The problem is that you're going to dump thousands of men on a beach, and they're going to get shot at by the Germans, and they're naturally going to want to go to ground and stay there. But that means the beach is going to get full. Someone's going to have to persuade them to clear the beach, to move on, to remove obstacles, to remove tank traps, to remove mines under enemy fire, so that more men can be loaded. Otherwise, the Germans are going to be able to keep you trapped on that beach, and you'll get to the stage that you can't unload any more men or equipment on that beach. And so this is the job of the 102nd Sub-Beach Group. Their job is to clear that beach. It is a vital job, one that was not really going to appear in any war films, but what a heroic thing to do. It must be terrifying to hit that beach in the first place. But now imagine that you're going to land on that beach in Normandy, and you know that you're going to have to stand there in the middle of a beach getting shot at by the Germans, waving your arms about, telling people to start clearing obstacles, doing engineering work, removing mines, and to get off that beach. I mean, how much bigger a target are you intending to be on that day on that beach? And yet vital if these landings are not to fail. And so the 102nd supported the landing of the 3rd Canadian Division. Now, as I tell you about their actions over the first couple of days of fighting, it's important to know they landed on Juno Beach with the Canadians, but each beach, like Juno, is subdivided. And so Juno Beach, example, is divided into Nan and Mike, and they've got loads of little names of these larger beaches. So the 102nd land with the 3rd Canadian. The 3rd Canadian Division's landing is, however, fatally delayed by 10 minutes by rough seas. Now, according to the historian Max Hastings, this leaves a substantial gap between the end of the bombardment and the beginning of the assault. The Germans have 10 minutes where they're not getting shot at, where they can come out of their bunkers, set up their machine guns, and prepare their beach defences. But still, the Canadians go ashore. But by 11:40 that morning, the congestion at Nan Beach, part of Juno, is so heavy that most infantry companies can't disembark from the landing craft. The landing craft are coming to the beach and there is nowhere to put the infantry. And so the 102nd go to work to clear that beach. Juno has to be cleared of obstacles, debris and mines. Movement control land just before noon, and military policemen begin to marshal vehicles. I have to apologise once again for my shocking French pronunciation, but the military police began to marshal vehicles through Bernier and Courcelles. Sappers begin to clear the minefields to allow a push on Carpiquet. Now there's fire from a German battery around Vaux-sur-Aire, and that delays the development of Mike Beach by 7th Group for 2 whole days, until infantry from the 102nd Group clear the German strongpoints, supported by tanks on the 8th. Bad weather, however, further delays the landing of supplies on D-Day itself, with 4 coastal ships being delayed, unable to drop off their supplies. But the tiny port of Courcelles-sur-Mer is captured intact, miraculously intact, allowing 1,000 tons of supplies a day to be unloaded until the 10th. Now, despite the 10-minute delay, the fact that that beach, Juno Beach, was the 2nd most heavily defended beach over Omaha of all the landings, Juno was the most successful of the landings. So, a 10-minute delay landing, the 2nd thickest defences, and yet still the most successful of the landings. The 3rd Canadians, supported by the 102nd, did a superb job that day. So why was it so successful? Well, firstly, they had a lot of those Hobart's Funnies amphibious tanks. The infantry of the 3rd Canadian was superbly well trained, but crucially, the landing zone was successfully cleared. One of the The great actions that day on D-Day were the actions of the 102nd to clear that beach. It's not going to be turned into any great Hollywood action film. No one's going to rush to the cinemas to see men clearing minefields, barbed wire, obstacles, or acting like military policemen trying to clear movement. But their actions that day were vital in getting men off that beach. Now, despite their hard work, there were still appalling traffic jams, which meant that the 3rd Canadian couldn't meet their first day objectives. We have here the words of Wilmot. It was not so much the opposition in front as the congestion behind on the beaches that prevented the Canadians reaching their objectives. But through hard work and courage, these men who were so reluctant to hit those beaches landed well and forced their way inshore. There would now begin an undignified race between the British and Americans and the Russians to capture as much of Europe as possible. And that's why it's so important that we remember the sacrifices of the British and American forces in 44 and 45. Yes, they freed Europe from Nazi tyranny. But more than that, they then made sure that it was not replaced by a new tyranny of the Soviet Union. By the time our troops landed in France in 1944, the German Empire was already doomed. But there was the question of what would replace Nazi control of Western Europe. And by their sacrifice and their heroism, they ensured that stable democratic regimes in Western Europe replaced Nazi Germany, rather than the cruel oppression of the Soviet Union. If we look at the Soviet records of ruling Poland and Hungary, we can see that we had much to thank these men who went ashore that day in 1944. And when we gather on Friday for our bank holiday, I know it'll be difficult, actually we can't gather, can we, because we're all under lockdown. But when we're not having to work on Friday, because it'll be bank holiday for victory in Europe, we should remember the sacrifices of all the men and women who gave their todays for our tomorrows, who sacrificed their lives and their presence to allow stable, democratic governments to be created in Europe. And we should be thankful that they were prepared to risk their lives and to do such a superb job under such difficult circumstances. And I hope you all stay safe, and there'll be another House Histories next week.